Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the 50th Anniversary Symposium of the Academy of the Social Sciences in Australia. My name is Chris Hackley. I'm the CEO of the Academy, and it's an absolute pleasure to welcome everybody to this virtual event on this milestone year. We still have people coming in to the meeting, but we do have a fairly tight time schedule. So what we're going to do right now is start with an acknowledgement of country.
Wherever you are across Australia,
we acknowledge the traditional owners and custodians of this land.
The Darug peoples,
the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation,
the Gundungurra people of the Southern Highlands,
the Ngunnawal people of the Canberra region on whose country we are standing,
and all other peoples of this vast continent.
Their ongoing connection through custodianship of its land and waters,
physical and spiritual,
through culture, language and ceremony.
Where sovereignty was never ceded, we pay our respects to elders past, present and still to come.
So with that, it's now my great pleasure to introduce our president, Professor Jane Hall, to launch the symposium. Jane is president of the Academy of the Social Sciences, a fellow of the Academy of Health and Medical Sciences, and she is Distinguished Professor of Health Economics at the University of Technology, Sydney. Over to you, Jane.
Thank you very much, Chris. Good morning, everyone. I'm joining you from the traditional lands of the Gadigal people of the Eora Nation. I pay my respects to all elders and acknowledge them as traditional custodians of land, waters, and knowledge. This is a special year for us because it's our 50th anniversary year. Though, of course, nothing comes from nothing, and the 50 years of the Academy of the Social Sciences was built on its predecessor, the Social Science Research Council, which existed for about 19 years. So we build on some very strong traditions as we go forward this morning. Over that time, over 1,000 fellows have been elected and acknowledged for their contribution to social sciences in Australia. We're currently, with our new fellows, at 742 fellows. That's 742 people around the country who are working hard to build and develop the social sciences and its contribution to society, to Australian society. One of the things we've done over the last few years that I'm sure you've noticed is take a much more outward-looking view from the Academy and make it, we've been trying to extend its influence generally and not just be a group of people who talk to each other. And we've tried to do that particularly with this, our special symposium in our anniversary year. And we have indeed, I think, about 650 participants. So that is a record, I believe, for Academy Symposia, and one that we owe a great deal of thanks to Professor Kevin McConkie, who's chaired the organising committee that's pulled this together. And I'm sure you agree with me, it's a really fascinating program we have ahead of us. I also want to thank everyone in the National Office team. I won't go through them individually because of the timing issues, but thank you for all the work you've done to make this happen. And I have some idea of how much work it is. Another thing we're doing this year that's something special is the launching the State of the Social Sciences report. And this is the most wide-reaching, I think, and ambitious report on where the social sciences are in Australia at the moment. It also sets out a number of priorities and challenges for us in the years ahead. I'm not going to say more about it at this stage because Mark Weston will be telling you more about that very shortly, but to say to you, please get involved, please give us your feedback, This comes to you as a discussion paper, and it will guide the priorities and strategies of the Academy from here. There's another launch happening at this meeting, and that is our early and mid-career researchers network. By definition, those people who become fellows of this Academy are people who've already reached a certain level in their careers, in their disciplines. But we know that the future of the social sciences depends very much on nurturing and developing our younger scholars. And we know that the current crises that have followed the COVID pandemic have created a lot of pressure for early career scholars and for mid-career scholars. And we're very keen as an academy to reach out to all of those people and to help nurture and develop their talent because that's where the future of the social sciences in Australia rests. I think that's probably all I should say at this stage, other than to say thank you all for joining us this morning. Please stay with us as we work through what is going to be an absolutely fascinating program reflecting on the social future of Australia. Back to you, Chris.
Thank you very much, Jane. And as you say, we're building on a lot of fantastic work and the legacies of many, many fantastic social scientists, leaders in their fields over half a century. I'd now like to introduce our Symposium Organising Committee Chair, Professor Kevin McConkie. Kevin has done an enormous amount of work, as Jane said. Kevin is a Fellow of the Academy and Emeritus Professor of Psychology at the University of New South Wales and a member of the Academy's Executive Committee.
Thank you, Chris, and I add my welcome and thanks to all involved in this anniversary symposium. I'm going to reinforce some of the points that Jane made and add a few. At 50 years of age, the Academy is not experiencing in any way a midlife crisis. Rather, it's very clear that it's adapting, engaging, communicating, and advocating for the social sciences and social scientists in ways that are strong and in ways that are different than has happened before. And this symposium, as Jane pointed to, is just one portion of that. Many have been involved in the symposium, and tomorrow afternoon at the end, I'll run through some of those thanks, and Jane's already anticipated some of those. Registrations are still coming in as we speak here and adding to the 650 that we have in hand. And I add that we're delighted that looking across those registrants, they range across researchers, teachers in schools, policymakers, those in the public and the private sectors, colleagues from the media, members of the public, including some people in school, and fellows of the Academy. Our aim was to reach broad, and it looks as though we're hopefully going to meet that aim. This symposium is quite different from the annual symposia that the Academy has held around this time each year for very many years. Some differences reflect and take advantage of the world in which we live. Travel restrictions limited a face-to-face meeting, but technology, whether we love Zoom or hate Zoom, it allows a much broader involvement. Other differences are quite intentional from what's happened before. We have a very wide range of topics and of speakers over the next half day today and a full day tomorrow. The topics cover many, but of course not all, of the issues to which social science disciplines contribute evidence and interpretation, as well as policy implications and directions. We've asked the speakers to be brief and to be focused in their comments and to remember the breadth of the audience. All of us know that it's a lot easier to say something by taking many words than it is to say it by taking a few. We've asked the speakers to be focused and succinct. The speakers are also different than before in previous years. The speakers include colleagues who are fellows of the Academy, and those whose expertise has been recognised in other ways. Colleagues who are relatively early in their careers, as Jane said, these are critically important colleagues, and those of us who are somewhat later in their careers. We've included colleagues who are focused on theoretical and empirical aspects of obtaining and interpreting information, and those who are focused on the public communication, the public reception, and the political reception and policy application of social science evidence. All of those are important. I personally hope that across the symposium, you will see the breadth and the depth, the excellence and the relevance of all of the disciplines of the social sciences that are involved. You'll also see in the comments of the speakers, and I've had the privilege of reading the papers that they're going to present, you'll also see how many of our disciplines can be viewed as overlapping with, if not actually central to, the physical sciences, the technologies, and the humanities. The days of very hard boundaries have long passed, in part because many of the challenges that we face as individuals and as societies require disciplines to intersect in their understanding and their approach to those challenges. And at least from my perspective, we need to remember that we, the sentient beings that we as humans are at the center of the ecological system that we have created, the human ecology that we have created. As Chris mentioned, there are different sorts of sessions in this symposium. We have 5 presentation sessions, 3 roundtable sessions, and a few individual sessions. The presentation and roundtable sessions, some of them will have the opportunity for the audience and the speakers to engage with each other through questions and comments. Not all of them, because of time, will make that possible. But I ask all of us to actively engage through providing questions and comments using the functions of Zoom. Even if those questions and comments aren't picked up in the symposium, they will be used. Again, as Chris mentioned, there will be other outputs and other outcomes. We will start working the day after tomorrow on the book that will emerge from this symposium. And your questions and comments will add to our thinking about how to shape that. So whatever you're saying, whatever you're thinking, please let us know, because that will be of value. One of the things that I asked the speakers to do was to be evidence-based, informative, and to be provocative as appropriate. So let me turn now to myself, make 4 brief, but perhaps just mildly provocative comments. Because I was thinking last night, what do I really want to see out of this? Yes, I really want to see the breadth. I really want to see the excellence. I really want to see the outreach, but there are other things that I'd like to see. And they don't come from any single presentation. First, the diversity of the disciplines within the social sciences is both a strength and a weakness of what we define as the social sciences. I hope that this symposium helps us to better understand and to appreciate the links among those disciplines, as well as with other disciplines. Looking at issues such as climate change, pandemics, we have to reach out very widely and very strongly. Even if they once existed, the days of sitting happily in a corner, hoping the world stays away from what we do, have long gone. Second, looking across many parts of the world, we have seen an increasing rejection of expertise. This trend about the rejection of expertise is often associated with increased authoritarian attitudes and behaviors. I hope that this symposium helps all of us to better understand the importance and the value of expertise. I'm not suggesting for a moment it should not be contested, but I am suggesting that we need to listen much more to expertise. I also hope that what we see and hear over today and tomorrow encourages those of us in the social sciences to perhaps a bit more bravely and certainly a bit more broadly communicate our expertise. Being a public intellectual is not a dirty word. Third, it is a truism that technological innovation and change is shaping much of our behaviour across the world. I hope that this symposium helps us to see that we need to insert social science disciplines much more obviously into the human technology interaction. And in my opinion, we need to be much clearer as social scientists that vague hand-waving appeals that technology will solve human problems without any recognition of the place of human and social structures and enterprises is naive at best and dangerous at worst. Fourth, and this is my last reflection from last night, the human tendency to be uncomfortable with ambiguity and to look for certainty is becoming more problematic as change continues. I hope that this symposium helps us to understand that those of us who have access to good evidence and have the capacity to use clear voices need to better assist society to avoid embracing simple, typically incorrect slogans that provide certainty. No matter what they are saying, slogans don't give certainty, they give false hope. Let me now turn to the first substantive session. As Jane indicated, the Academy today releases the major report, The State of the Social Sciences 2021. The report's on the Academy website and the link has been shared with you. Professor Mark Weston chaired the committee that brought that report together. Mark, as some of you will know, is the director of the Institute for Social Science Research at the University of Queensland. He's a sociologist who works on projects across the broad span of social policy. Mark will give us some highlights of the report in his presentation that asks the provocative question, stepping up, are we ready to deliver meaningful impact in a changing world? Thank you, and over to you, Mark.
Thank you, Kevin. I'll just share my screen with everybody. So I'll just make sure I get you the right one. Good. I hope that's good and everybody can see that. So look, thank you, Kevin, and it's my pleasure and my privilege today to launch the State of the Social Sciences report. And I would like to begin also by acknowledging the traditional owners of all the lands on which we are gathered today. I'm on Jagera and Turrbal country, and I pay my respects to elders past and present. I'd also like to acknowledge any Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people who are with us today. So the State of the Social Sciences report for 2021 is a project that was initiated by the Academy of Social Sciences in mid-2020. And our objectives, as Kevin said, were to provide a high-level overview of Australia's social science ecosystem and to identify priorities and opportunities going forward. We want the report to be relevant, to be broadly useful, and to be engaging. And importantly, we want it to be a catalyst for your feedback and involvement as we all together take the social sciences forward. So we approached the report in a deliberately comprehensive way. We didn't want to make the mistake of presenting social science as if it was something that only happened in universities and was undertaken through university research and teaching. And so our approach had a number of characteristics that were designed to meet these objectives. In the first place, it was deeply collaborative. It was consultative across the sector and the components of the social science ecosystem, and I'll talk about that in a minute. It involved written submissions, roundtable consultations with a range of representatives of different sectoral representatives, detailed interviews, an open survey that went out to the whole community, and expert external reviews of draft materials. So it genuinely is a collective product. We also wanted it to be cross-sectoral. We recognise that social science education and research doesn't just take place in the higher education sector, it occurs in schools, in the vocational education and training sector, and it also occurs in universities and in the private sector. So we focus on all of those things. We also wanted to have a specific focus on research, and we particularly wanted to focus on social sciences' relationship with First Nations peoples, which we identified as a core issue to be investigated in more detail. And this engagement is one of the things that I think is one of the key outcomes for this report, and hopefully one of the key platforms in an agenda going forward for the social sciences. As Kevin, I think, has implied, like the symposium, we want the report to be interesting. None of us involved in the steering committee wanted to produce a text-heavy, data-heavy document that functioned very well, perhaps as a sort of a paperweight, but didn't have much other sort of useful purpose. And so what we've produced is a report that is highly interactive. It's available online. We have a website, which you have all been sent. There are interactive data visualizations. We have opportunities for you to comment, and we will be periodically updating the work that we do. I hope we've achieved our desire for interactivity and engagement. And finally, we wanted to have the capacity not simply to survey the ecosystem, but to drill down into specific topics and major issues where we can show data and present findings. The audience for the report is deliberately broad. And so we start with a definition of social science. And we aim to put social science in the context of other disciplines and define what's distinctive about our enterprise. And Kevin has already suggested some of these things in his opening comments. The distinction that we focus on is the importance of the social, the events, objects, rules, patterns, and other things that arise when humans interact with one another in groups. And for us, the defining kind of core component of the social science disciplines is their emphasis on the social and research and knowledge about society. There are a broad range of social science disciplines, but the distinction is the focus on the social and the use of systematic methods, approaches, and conceptualizations to describe, predict, and influence the world. And this is really what distinguishes our disciplines from other disciplines. The social matters, and we know that as social scientists. One way to think about the history of Australia is to think about a century or more of social milestones, significant institutional arrangements, policy developments that have defined and continue to shape the way in which we live and the kind of society that Australia has become and will become into the future. Many of the milestones that we identify reflect the contributions and importance of social science knowledge and research. And the impact on major policies and institutional frameworks is one of the very, very concrete ways that the social sciences in Australia contribute to Australian society. It also means that the formation of Australia and its ongoing formation and the formation of social science are connected, and they proceed together. The report takes a comprehensive view about where social science is undertaken through education, research, and practice in schools, vet, and the university sector, and in government, business, and the community. We also examine university research and research in other organizations, and we look at the core kind of conditions for the sustainability and durability of social science going forward. The ecosystem that we're talking about is very, very large. It includes over 3 million graduates with social science qualifications, Over 1.2 million students are undertaking vocational social science training, and there are nearly 900,000 university students studying social science. This is probably the largest single kind of disciplinary constellation in Australia when we think about the ecosystem as a whole. The report also identifies grand societal challenges, and these emerged from our consultations. And as Kevin indicated in his introduction, the future for the social sciences in part is going to be around engaging with the challenges that are facing Australia and the world, where social science can make a real difference by helping us to explain and understand the challenges and the problems that they bring, and also by contributing to the solutions. These challenges won't be solved or addressed by social scientists working alone. It will require teams and cross-sectoral engagement, but they define one top-level agenda for the social sciences into the future, and they come out of our consultative process. And one of the things we would be very keen for you to do is to engage with these challenges and tell us what you think about them. So there are 7, as I've said, that we've identified. And in no particular order, we identified first the threat to democracy and democratic principles. And Kevin also introduced this idea when he talked about the role of expertise. And we see this as a grand challenge because we believe that the threats to democracy and democratic principles make it harder to respond to wicked and complex problems like climate change, poverty, or global inequality. They also make it harder to respond to sudden shocks like COVID-19. And we've seen the consequences of the democratic deficit play out around the world in the way that different countries have been able to deal with or not deal with the pandemic. We also recognize that digital and technological disruptions to the ways we work, learn, and engage with others pose significant challenges for us. And again, Kevin also mentioned this. And going forward, the kind of future that we have is going to depend on the ability of the social sciences with other disciplines to engage with the impact of digital transitions and disruptions. There is a real need for reconciliation between social sciences and First Nations peoples, and I'll talk about this briefly in a minute. We also believe that the social sciences, along with other disciplines and other sectors, have a significant role to play in developing effective solutions to respond to climate change, and also in managing and fairly distributing the costs of adaptation and transition. And we have seen the contested nature of climate change politics in Australia around debates around how we share and manage the costs of adaptation and transition. We think there's an opportunity to use the recovery from COVID-19 to work towards a more prosperous, equitable, and resilient and sustainable Australia. And we frame that as a significant challenge. The existence of persistent and deep and enduring social and economic inequality emerged in the consultation as a key problem facing not just Australia, but the world. And again, we see that as an opportunity for the social sciences. And then finally, our consultations also revealed that the social sciences have a role to play helping to describe and shape the future of work in response to social, economic, and technological changes associated with things like artificial intelligence, robotics, the rise of the gig economy and the platform economy. So these for us define an agenda for the social sciences, and we would welcome your comments on them. We've also looked across schools, vocational education and training, higher education and research to try to see what's working well and what isn't. And we've produced a series of scorecards which capture our assessments of these sectors. There's a lot to be optimistic about. Public recognition of the value of social science is strong. There's strong student demand despite job-ready graduates, and social science graduates enjoy good and strong graduate outcomes. But there are also concerns. The public understanding and awareness of the social sciences is limited despite the positive recognition. And we believe that social science has a way to go to achieve reconciliation with First Nations people and to address racism, discrimination, lack of recognition, and underrepresentation. So for the sector going forward, we've identified 5 key priorities as a whole. The first of these we think is genuine reconciliation. The social sciences have to acknowledge and attempt to right past and ongoing harms with Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people. And we need to address the underrepresentation of Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander people throughout the social science ecosystem. We also think we need a more connected sector, better integration across the ecosystem between schools, vet, universities, research organisations, business, government and not-for-profit sectors to build the networks and alliances that will strengthen the foundations of Australian social science, enable it to respond effectively and robustly to opportunities and challenges. We need to get better at talking about our public value. We provide the knowledge, skills, evidence that shape professional practice in areas like law, accountancy, management, and teaching. We contribute to the decisions and actions of governments, business, and the not-for-profit sector, and we provide the educational foundations that support millions of Australians. We need to get better at talking about how we contribute in all of these areas. The grand challenges that we identify in the report, like the threats to democracy or digital disruption, can't be answered by social science alone. Complex and long-standing problems require multidisciplinary and interdisciplinary solutions. They require different sectors. They require participatory approaches that involve all the stakeholders who are impacted by the effect of these things. For social science to have real impact on substantial real-world problems, we're going to need to work with others who are not social scientists. We're going to need to work in ways that may be unfamiliar to us, and we will need to understand the various contributions that disciplines and stakeholders all bring to that common enterprise. And finally, we need to acknowledge that COVID-19 and the Job Ready Graduates Act have had major impacts on the university sector, affecting employment, teaching and research. There's a clear perception that the Job Ready Graduates Act was intended to target the social sciences, make our disciplines less attractive to university students. We need to find ways going forward to sustain and maintain the vitality of the social sciences in university teaching and research. We also identified 26 sector-specific priorities for different parts of the sector. You'll be very pleased to know I'm not going to go through each one of them, but they include concrete activities to support reconciliation and self-determination for First Nations people in relation to social science, and initiatives that we think will strengthen social science in school, vet and higher education sectors and in university research. So where to from here? The report, as we've said, and as Jane indicated, is really your report. We see the priorities and challenges as the basis for a future agenda for Australian and social science, but the way forward is open. We have suggested some directions, but it's up to the stakeholders for social science in Australia, and that's really everybody, to engage thoughtfully and critically with what we've done, with the findings, the priorities, and consider what should concretely be done to advance the social sciences in Australia. There'll be further consultation and discussion around this in 2022 from the Academy with periodic updates. You can also find digital and downloadable versions of the report at the website shown. You can sign up to be informed and also to have your say, so please do so. The more people engage with the report and the other materials, the more valuable and useful the whole project becomes. I've been tremendously proud and privileged to be able to chair the steering committee for this, and I would like to acknowledge it's been a deeply collective effort. I'd like to thank the staff of the Academy in particular for their work and their invaluable contributions. I'd also like to thank all of the stakeholders that we engaged with through the consultation process and all of the other members of the steering committee for their invaluable contributions to what I think is an exceptional piece of work. We're very proud of what we've produced. On behalf of the Academy of Social Sciences in Australia, I'm delighted to launch the 2021 State of the Social Sciences Report. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark, and thank you, Jane and Chris. I simply have to advise that we now have a 10-minute break, or actually about an 8-minute break, and we'll be resuming for the first round table at 11:45 Australian Eastern Daylight Time. So please rejoin us at that time by clicking in again. Thank you very much.